Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Washington Brawl podcast presented to you by the Brawl Network. I'm your host, Parker Hamlin, and I'm joined by my co-host and everybody's favorite Hokie, Chris Fowler. In a series of events that perfectly describe 2020 in a nutshell, the Washington football team has not only lost their number one, but their number two running back within the matter of a month with today's shocking release of veteran running back and future Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson. Chris, how you feeling after the news?
I thought I'd be able to enjoy a happy Friday, nice and relaxing, but of course I woke up to that bombshell of a tweet and information. So I can't say it's been a pleasureful Friday evening, but I'm trying to manage, trying to get through. So
Yeah, I woke up around 7, man, and my phone was just blowing up. I know you woke up around noon. You're just like, "What happened?" And I was
yeah,
like,
didn't have any classes today, so it's my one day to sleep in. I wake up around noon, and I was already late to the news by then, and it just had to like siffle. I mean, I had to just go through all the tweets and texts and everything. And I mean, honestly, most of my family is not Redskin or Washington football team fans. So they were trying to give me hell about it. Said they were going to go pick him up or whatever. So I kind of hope he goes somewhere and does something big. But I know we'll go and talk more about that a little bit.
my mom actually has his jersey, and she messaged me this morning, and she was devastated, man. I mean, she's a casual fan at best, but
Jerseys are bad luck. Every jersey I've ever gotten of a player, they get cut, released, hurt, something in the next year. I had RG3, I had Alfred Morris, so I don't even buy jerseys anymore, man. I just buy like the regular generic T-shirts.
you sound like that Jags fan on Barstool, one of the Allen Robinson, Ngakwe, that whole line of people. I mean, that dude's just a walking bad luck charm. Um, Before we get into that, in the usual, we talk the good, the bad, and the ugly about the Washington football team. And speaking of Washington talk, today, joining us live is NBCS Washington's own big man connoisseur and special guest, Mitch Tischler. Mitch, thanks for coming on, man. Glad we could finally make it happen.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you guys on this fun-filled, exciting day.
Yeah, fun-filled, exciting day is right. We're sitting here talking about our little normal blue-collar lives where we're getting text messages, notifications about Sports Center and Barstool. How's your day been? How's the last 24 hours been ever since the news dropped for you?
It's been pretty chaotic. I actually had a fantasy draft last night. Of course, did not take Antonio Gibson, but all my friends were texting me this morning like, "You knew this in the morning. You knew this last night. That's unfair. It's BS."
It's funny how those things work out. I know me and Chris kind of spent today as kind of a day to kind of scout our fantasy football drafts as well. I'm in about 3 or 4 leagues. How many leagues are you in?
I do 2 real leagues. I have a league with my high school buddies that we've been doing this is our 20th year now, and then a league with college buddies that's been going on about 10, 15 years. So those are my two real ones, the ones that I count, and then I do some fun ones off to the side with other people around.
Mitch, I know you're a big betting man. Are those buy-in leagues? What kind of buy-in are you looking at, man? I have a couple that are like $5, but I feel like you're probably going big or go home.
Yeah, it's a little more than $5.
And it's funny when, you see Washington football team players on the board, I'm not going to pick with my heart, And, the one time you don't take Gibson, it turns out to not be in your favor. And Peterson was a guy that people were really hoping could come in and be kind of a waiver wire pickup since, he was going to get so many carries, since he was practicing with the one-star at camp as well. So, honestly, it's crazy to see how all that's turned out. And I got to ask you up front, I see Chris has got his doggo in the background. How's Carver?
Carver's doing great. He is passed out on the ground right next to me. He's being nice and quiet for now. I'm hoping it stays that way for the next about half hour or so.
Well, even if it's virtually, man, it's good to see you, good to hear from you. It's been almost a year since I've been able to catch up with you, Pete, JP, and everybody. A lot of that's to do with the pandemic, of course. Kind of kept a lot of people indoors. Over at NBCS Washington, I'm sure it's been a hell of an acclimation period for you. Tell us, how has it been getting back in the swing of things, and what has made training camp so much of a different experience for you guys over there?
Oh, man. I mean, well, first of all, getting back to training camp, and I say that in quotes, training camp, was great. Just, it felt like the first sense of normalcy we've had since, mid-March or whatever it was when everyone, started being shuttered. And just to be outside, be amongst your colleagues, watch football with my own eyes and see it happening on the field was really awesome. It's been a totally different experience this year. I mean, obviously, we're normally down in Richmond, and we live and breathe football 24 hours a day for, 3 weeks or so. And, it's different because we got to go out and watch practice, and, we were incredibly thankful to even be allowed to do that. It was a smaller media corps that was there. I think the NFL only allowed about 20 media members to be in, to be at practices, and you had to go in and take your temperature. You had to wear masks. They had, distancing. They had, people that were reminding you to keep your 6 feet distance. But we were able to walk in, watch practice, but then we had to walk out afterwards. So normally, you get a chance to talk to the players as they're coming off the field. You get to hang out with your media members. They have group interviews and all that kind of stuff. And all that stuff was relegated to Zoom. And it's been a lot different, because during training camp is when you really get to know the guys, the players, and the coaches. And with everything that's new around the team, it as much as we are in it every day with everybody, you feel a little more removed than you normally are, because you're not able to have those little side conversations and get to know the guys, more than just as well as you can get to know somebody talking to them on a Zoom session.
I mean, even as the fans, we don't get to go at all, of course, but I mean, I can only imagine how detached you guys feel from it. I see you guys under the tent, having to socially distance, and a big chunk of your job, other than writing articles and recording the pod and stuff like that, is just talking directly to the guys, right after camp in the locker room. I know you spoke about Richmond. Our co-host Garrett Hudson, even though he had kind of a temporary stint with the team back in 2018, said that by the end of training camp, everybody was kind of drained by the end of Richmond. I also remember you guys echoing a similar sentiment on your show. Do you miss Richmond, or do you feel as it was kind of almost the end of an arranged marriage?
Well, I don't think it's over yet. First of all, I think that there's a good chance the team goes back there, because I believe they still owe the city one more year. Now, I have no idea what happens because of the pandemic and all that stuff. I liked going to Richmond a lot. I mean, I liked getting away. Almost like it was for the players. You have so many coaches that love for the team to get away so they can bond and get to know each other and all that. It's kind of the same for the media. We spend more time at the park with our fellow media members than we do, with our families during football season. So, you come to enjoy the time that you're in Richmond. What they would normally do is they'd go for 2 weeks and then have the preseason game, and then they'd have to go back down to Richmond for about 3-4 more days. I don't miss that 3-4 days on the back end. That's when everyone was hot and tired and ornery and ready to go home and done with it. But, we're just happy to have football back, man. I'm just so happy to be watching the pads hit in person, and it feels very much like the NFL season's going to go off, quote unquote, hopefully without a hitch. So I'm excited for it to happen.
Yeah, I know you're not a big fan of the NBA, but when the bubble started back up, I was very happy about that. And now that the NFL is about a week out, barring anything crazy, it feels so good to have sports back. And I'm sure covering the team once you get near the end of that time in Richmond, it kind of grows on anybody. But that time in Richmond, you guys, that's the first time I met you guys. It's a time for you guys to meet a lot of your friends, meet players, talk to players, of course. I remember when I showed up last year for the pod party. When I was at camp, and you, Pete, and all the guys were flagging me down, flagging other fans down, even though it was smoldering out there. But, you guys always looked like you were having a blast. And another thing is the players, man. The players miss the camaraderie. I was listening to the Specialist pod yesterday, and you guys were talking to Tressway, Dustin Hopkins, and they said that they feel like they can't really develop a relationship, with newer players, older players, or really anyone. It's kind of straight to football. So, speaking of training camp, there's a shocking development in Washington's backfield as of this morning. We've already spoke of it. But the Washington football team released running back Adrian Peterson, who has rushed for 1,940 yards in the last 2 years with the organization. Just yesterday, the team was posting pictures of him in his new uniform, and today he's a free agent. So Ron said he contacted him around 7 a.m., told him the news. Mitch, just how shocking was the news to you?
Honestly, as shocking as it gets. We expected that he was going to be on this team. There were 5 running backs in the backfield, and it felt like Peyton Barber was going to be the odd man out. Ron had used Adrian Peterson during training camp. He gave an impassioned speech on the first Saturday of camp because the team wasn't practicing well, and he pointed to Thomas Davis Jr. He pointed to Adrian Peterson and was like, "These are the guys you need to look to. These are the guys that know what's going on in the league. These are the guys that know what's right. Follow them. If you want to know how to play in the NFL, if you want to know how to play football, listen to Adrian Peterson, listen to Thomas Davis." And all along, all of this talk of culture and everything that Ron's trying to instill, Adrian Peterson is a guy who has done it in multiple different cities. He's come back from major injuries. he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, there's not enough that you can say about him. The one thing that I, will always remember about Adrian Peterson was his first year here in November. Obviously, the team wasn't great, and we were setting up for an interview in the practice bubble in Ashburn on a Wednesday after practice. And it was 2 to 3 hours after practice, and Adrian walks in the bubble, and he's just doing full field, full 100-yard sprints, full tilt. And it was amazing, man, because he's, 45 years old, however old he is, and he's out there just working his butt off. And you just don't see that. You don't see all NFL players put in that extra work. And to know how hard he's working, he's such a great role model for, honestly, everybody on the team. But, it's hard not to look at Dwayne Haskins and Terry McLaurin and the other young players on offense and see, know that they were learning from a guy who's that dedicated to keeping his body in shape and being ready to play.
And, he's a pro's pro, like you said. And I mean, he wouldn't have lasted this long in the National Football League if he didn't hold himself, to that kind of pedigree. And, I'm sure that you, JP, Pete, and everybody over there did not expect to ever, cover him for, the Washington football team. And it's just, I'm sure, like you said, it was a complete delight. It was like he was really good with the media. Like you said, he leads by examples with all those guys in the locker room. You got the defensive side of the ball. You got guys like Thomas Davis are doing that. It looked like he was going to be that kind of guy for Dwayne Haskins, Terry McLaurin. Chris, how did you feel about the news?
I mean, honestly, when I first saw it, my first question was, what did he do? Because I felt like this was another situation like Geis, where he got into some sort of, as hard as it may be to imagine, he got some sort of like legal trouble, and he was just, forced, kind of forced to hand to Ron Rivera. But, after I saw the, outpouring support from, the Washington social media feeds and from, his teammates and all, I realized like this was truly just based on, performance, and this was just a team decision, and which really just blows my mind. I mean, Adrian Peterson was the guy who, in Ron Rivera's introductory press conference, he was in the front row. I mean, he was one of a handful of players that was there to welcome in Ron Rivera into the building, and they just picked up his option. I want to say it was in February, and it was like I think it was like a $2 million deal. That it was just a 1-year deal. And when they picked up that option, Ron Rivera has a quote. I'll read it right here. It says, quote, "Adrian Peterson is the epitome of what it means to be a pro in this league. Adrian's leadership and passion towards the game of football will set an example of what is expected of the players in this program moving forward." And I feel like that just hits right on Mitch's point, man. I think he was more than just a running back. He was more than just a really good player. He was a leader, and he was a guy who we like to call like a second-hand coach. A coach that plays on the field too, a coach that gets carries. And I kind of understand what they wanted to do here. I get the point that they're trying to make and the reason for cutting. I don't think I would have done it, but I guess that's why I don't get paid the big bucks.
Well, I mean, all those things you said Rivera said about AP, that's not a guy you expect to get cut on Friday right before cut day,
No.
But I think that Rivera did that in a way to sort of show respect to AP, to kind of, call and let him know firsthand, this is why we're making that decision.
Right, not just throw him in with the rest of the guys to get cut.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he kind of made today about AP, and, nobody saw it coming, not you, not Mitch, not anybody. Adrian Peterson got a lot of reps with the ones in training camp, and he said himself that he didn't see it coming at all. Especially if the exodus of Geis, AP was a lock on pretty much everyone's 53-man roster predictions. Mitch, as someone who covers the team, was there anything indicative that this was coming throughout training camp?
No, I mean, he was taking his first team reps. If as you look at it, you can obviously understand where they're coming from. This is a team that, you need to give your young players a chance to play this year. And Adrian Peterson is a great leader and, great for the culture and everything that we've all talked about. But at the end of the day, he's not in your long-term plans to make this team, a perennial playoff team, or, hopefully get to the Super Bowl at some point. So I like the idea of giving those carries to Antonio Gibson, Bryce Love, give J.D. McKissick the ball. You're really developing this team to win going down the road. Adrian Peterson is a great dude, and by cutting him today, you give him an opportunity. You're signaling the 31 other teams that, hey, this dude's available. When you make your cuts tomorrow or Saturday, make sure that you are understanding that this guy is out there, and they're giving him every opportunity to be picked up by another team. If he's cut on Saturday with the wash of everybody else, he might get lost in that mass hysteria. So they did it the right way. I think you can look at it in the best possible light as there's adults at the table. You know, last year, Jay Gruden didn't want him and benched him week 1, you know, and that was his like,
It's a slap in the face.
Like, I don't want him, you know, fine, I'll keep him, but he's not going to play. You know, Ron Rivera's in charge and he's doing what he wants. You know, he's controlling this team the way that he wants to. And that's a big step forward because we haven't seen that in DC in a long time.
I think the biggest thing is that schematically, Adrian Peterson, believe it or not, didn't have much of a place in Scott Turner's offense. Do you think that's a fair assumption, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you look at all the other running backs on this roster at this point now. I mean, Gibson, McKissick, they're all very known to be pass-catching running backs. And I feel like that has a big part to do with it. And I'm not saying that Adrian Peterson couldn't have become a good running back in that system, but all the motion, all the reliability on pass catching, and I think Adrian Peterson has proved to us that he can catch the ball. I don't think he's definitely not known as like a sound route runner or has the most exceptional hands amongst NFL running backs, but I think he was good enough to where he could have gotten the job done if that was asked of him. I mean, that's always been his repertoire. Get the job done when it's asked of him. And I don't know if you remember, Parker, but a few months ago we started a kind of a tweet that kind of got big, the start, bench, or cut tweet with all the running back room. I mean, at that point, we had 6 running backs that could have possibly made the roster. And the top 2 running backs that all were start and like first bench was Geis and AP. And now they're no longer on the team. It's just crazy to think like where we are just months later after that all happened. So
I think age is a factor in all of this. To me, if not the determining factor. The 35-year-old running back, of course, is going to vow that he's going to put up career best numbers in 2020. That's just the kind of guy Adrian Peterson is. And I feel like Mitch is right. It's kind of like a turn of a new page. It shows that, they believe in the young guys. And, the fan base is very somber, of course, after Lease, especially after how he led the locker room. But after AP, we're talking about some of the other running backs on the depth chart. There is a lot of uncertainty. Antonio Gibson, Bryce Love, J.D. McKissick, Peyton Barber. Most are assuming that Barber will be the one who replaces AP as that high-volume power back in the offense. But quite frankly, if we're going to be cutthroat about it, Barber has never rushed close to 1,000 yards in his 4-5 seasons in the NFL. Do you feel as if assuming Barber can replicate that workload? Mitch, do you feel like assuming that Peyton Barber can come in and do what Adrian Peterson did is naive?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, a lot bit. I think Peyton Barber's role in this offense is going to be short yardage and goal line. I don't know that you're going to see high volume for Peyton Barber. I'm not expecting that. I think the main takeaway from this Adrian Peterson thing, which everyone can be sad that he's gone and whatnot, is Antonio Gibson must have shown a lot, enough that Ron Rivera felt like he could move on from a future Hall of Famer and a guy that would run for 1,000 yards a season, right? So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Antonio Gibson. I mean, I think he's going to be your bell cow. I think that, I know you guys are VTech guys, and I'm sorry to rag on the tight end group and Logan Thomas, but there's not a ton of talent at tight end. So I think you're going to see a lot of 2 running back sets, and I think you're going to see a lot of Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick lined up in wing T type scenarios, and they're going to be motioning out and motioning across and, trying to create matchups. But to me, there's a lot to be said about Adrian Peterson being gone, but I think it says more about what Antonio Gibson has shown in this, abbreviated offseason. And I think fans should be super excited about the 3rd rounder from Memphis. I mean, he's obviously shown a lot, and Ron is excited about him. I'm excited about him. I think it's a big step forward for this team.
Absolutely. And in closure with Adrian Peterson, some people were suggesting that, they could possibly release him and sign him week 1 and he wouldn't get a fully guaranteed contract. As someone who covers the team, I think you can agree that that's not an option here. AP wants to play. AP wants to be that guy for another team. I think people assuming that it's kind of silly. They're not going to Thad Moss this entire situation. AP believes he has a lot left in the tank. And, he was averaging almost 4 yards a carry. And at that point in his career, that's honestly not bad at all. But just the lack of NFL
in front of a pretty meager offensive line the past couple of seasons.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Adrian, he'll get picked up by some. He'll get picked up. I mean, there are a couple spots that seem to make sense that I think you look at pretty much exactly what just happened with Leonard Fournette. He's in a way better situation now. Went from Jacksonville to Tampa just a couple hours across the state, and all of a sudden is on a team that's going to be a Super Bowl contender. I don't know exactly where that's going to be, but there's a spot in this league for Adrian Peterson, and I have no doubt that he's going to be on a better football team with a chance to maybe go out and get a ring.
Dwayne Haskins, who was named the Week 1 starter by Rivera this week, seems to be pretty bummed about the release as well, saying he grew up watching AP play, and it's an experience he'll never forget. I know you said you remember that story about Adrian Peterson earlier. How much will AP's leadership on this team be missed, Mitch? I know you've been around.
There are years that I would have said that it would have been missed more than it will this year. I think kind of the craziness of this season curtails some of the shenanigans that happen in NFL locker rooms during a normal NFL season. I think there's a lot of respect for Ron Rivera, not just as a coach, but everything that he's going through. I think that you got to look at Alex Smith being around still and, the leadership that he can provide. We joke all the time about Terry McLaurin. He's a second-year player, but he might as well be a 10-year vet.
Yeah.
These guys, there are some guys up there who can really, kind of lead the way. And I think you're going to see a lot of youthful exuberance from this offensive side. I mean, between Dwayne and Terry and Antonio Gibson and Steven Sims, I mean, there's a lot of there are things to be excited about as you look at this offense.
You said a youthful exuberance. That's perfect. You read my mind. The youth movement at running back is coming. Whether people are ready for it or not. You got the third rounder out of Memphis, like you're talking about earlier, Antonio Gibson, man. I mean, Rivera has spoken very highly of him even today after the release of Peterson. And the momentum is certainly real, if not astronomical at this point. Us here at Brawl have said that we feel as if he's been sort of a secret weapon. Rivera's kind of kept his role somewhat confidential as he's kind of increased his reps with the ones. With the release of Peterson, what kind of message do you think this conveys to Gibson?
I mean, if I'm Antonio Gibson, it's probably a little weird, a bit of a weird situation for him losing a guy that he grew up watching in AD. But at the same time, that's got to build confidence in the kid. We've seen him. It's interesting. He does a great job of, he's kind of two different backs in one, because you see him when he runs between the tackles, he gets low and he kind of gets behind his shoulder pads, and he's able to just, kind of wiggle in between, these little holes. And then when he gets to the outside, he kind of opens it up and he shows you that speed. His hands in receiving have been, surprisingly good. He's caught a lot of balls that just felt like they should have been dropped either at his feet or over his head. And that's not necessarily from Dwayne. There's 4 quarterbacks there throwing the running backs balls, but he's shown a propensity to be able to, get that extra yard up the middle and also show a little speed, a little wiggle, a little get out from the outside. So Antonio Gibson has a huge opportunity here. And, I doubt that he thought that he was going to step in his first year and be the number one back, but it kind of seems to be the situation that we're looking at right now.
And, in college, he was wide receiver. He got a very limited amount of touches at running back, and it seems as if Washington's, of course, going to start him at running back. Do you feel like that raw athleticism and that lack of experience at the position is going to harm him? Or, what have you seen from him at camp that's kind of made these coaches believe, this is our guy? He can come in and replace someone who's going to be in Canton one day.
Yeah, I think when you look at running backs in the NFL these days, you have a lot of kind of one-trick ponies, guys that either can run between the tackles or work on the outside with their speed and quickness. And a lot of that is why you see there aren't a lot of quote-unquote three-down backs in the league anymore. But Antonio Gibson has shown an ability, and granted, everything that we say is, with an asterisk, because we're in training camp. We're seeing them go against the same offense goes against the same defense every day. Sometimes you get stuck in a bubble where, oh my gosh, this guy is looking great, and then you realize that, maybe the guys he's going against aren't so good themselves. But he's shown a propensity to be able to be the back that can do both things, that can go between the tackles and get the extra yard as well as be on the outside. And I think that's what sets him apart from everyone else. There was so much excitement about what Darius Geis could do in those regards, and I think Antonio Gibson steps right in, and I think he's, I think they're equally talented players. I don't think it's necessarily a step down from what they may have gotten from Geis.
I think you guys have said it best with the whole Ashburn syndrome thing. Whenever you see a guy coming into the team, young, old, whatever it may be, you wonder if it's just where he is rather than other circumstances. You know, when AP shows up, rushes for 1,000 yards, you know, you wonder if he would have that level of success anywhere else. You wonder if that level of success would mean as much if it were anywhere else. Chris, do you feel like his raw ability, you know, at both positions is going to be something that's going to help him, or do you feel like he's ready for the workload he's about to get?
Oh, I think he's got to get the workload now at this point. I mean, he's pretty much, I wouldn't say the only option left, but there's question marks surrounding Bryce Love and J.D. Mckissick and really everyone. So if he's going to be the workhorse, let him be the workhorse. Let's see what we got in this kid. And I mean, I don't think raw athleticism hurts anybody really. I think you would rather have someone with raw athleticism that you can kind of mold into the player you want to be. And in a Scott Turner offense, I think that's mainly ideal. I mean, you see Christian McCaffrey. I think he was 1,000 yards receiving and rushing. I mean, I really hope that's what we see Antonio Gibson become one day. So, I mean, I'm not trying to put too much on his plate, but I think that's kind of the goal here. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong. I am excited for Antonio Gibson, and I think the Adrian Peterson news and kind of our reaction has kind of lessened, my I'm not saying it's lessened my excitement, but I think it takes away from the fact that I am still excited for this kid. It's just the news kind of pointed me in a different direction. But yeah, I think Antonio Gibson is going to be very fun to watch. I honestly thought he'd line up as a receiver. I just kind of thought, I thought our running back position was kind of set, and I thought we had some question marks at the receiver, and I felt like he'd be a guy that could come in there and compete. But it's going to be really interesting to see how Scott Turner uses him. I know he's been pretty quiet about his role, which I kind of like because I think it's going to create a lot of excitement on game day.
Well, everybody's assuming that it's Antonio Gibson's job, but then you got J.D. Mckissick, former Lion Seahawk, has a very similar skill set to Gibson, and like Gibson, was a receiver in college, and McKissick has gotten a lot of reps with the ones. In my opinion, he kind of lacks the physicality that Gibson brings as kind of a north side runner. Mitch, you think it's safe to say that McKissick is sort of the new Chris Thompson in this backfield?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of the role he's going to play, in that he's going to be your more receiving back than anything between the tackles per se. But I think you're going to see him on the field a lot more than we saw Chris Thompson on the field. I think you're going to see, as exciting as it is for Antonio Gibson, who I think is going to be your main running back as we think about running backs as they've been used for the past, 70 years in the NFL. Antonio Gibson is more of that player. But I think we're going to be seeing a lot of J.D. McKissick as well. I think he's going to be on the field quite often, and he's going to be being put in a lot of situations where they can get uncomfortable matchups on the defense. There's not that much athleticism on the Washington football team's offense, but when you look at guys like J.D. McKissick and Steven Sims, they're going to be moving those guys around to different spots, try and get them matched up on linebackers, get them put in positions where they can do some damage. So I think you're going to see McKissick on the field, not quite as much as Antonio Gibson, but he'll be a close second.
It looks as if McKissick has earned that third down back role. He's become very, very comfortable with Dwayne Haskins. Chris, do you feel like Peterson's exit, Gibson kind of moving up the depth chart, hurts McKissick or helps him?
Well, it obviously helps him because you have a guy who I thought would take a ton of snaps this year out of the picture. So now that just leaves more reps for other guys and more snaps and more carries for other guys. So it's definitely not going to hurt him. My biggest question is, and I can say I haven't looked at this since Peterson was cut, and Mitch, you might be able to answer this just with with you being in training camp and all. Do we have a blocking back on this team now? I mean, I don't think Adrian Peterson was really known for his blocking.
I think Barber's the guy.
With a weak offensive line, I feel like a blocking running back is going to be huge in this scenario.
Yeah, well, I think you're going to see one of those tight ends be used if you're talking about like bringing in somebody as an H-back type player. But I think that the way that Scott Turner runs his offense, and this is, the most exciting thing about it, is that it's predicated a lot on getting the ball on misdirection and getting the ball out quickly, and that can only help the offensive line. So you're going to see these guys, cross, with a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of movement. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of two-back sets where the running backs are asked to block a whole lot. So. But in short yardage and that sort of thing, I think you might see a Jeremy Sprinkle type lineup in the fullback spot and be that lead blocker.
Well, in this running back rotation, lastly, we have the former Heisman hopeful returning from a torn ACL, 2019 fourth rounder Bryce Love looks to make his impact. The biggest question really is how much of an impact will that be? He's rehabbed from injury, had kind of a shaky start to camp, but he's seemingly regained his old form the last couple weeks. Mitch, is Bryce Love kind of a wait-and-see situation, or do you think Scott Turner expects immediate results from Love, especially after AP's release?
I don't think you expect immediate results. I mean, it's been 2 years since he's been on a football field. He had the cleanup surgery. He tore the ACL 2 Decembers ago, had the cleanup surgery last year, and now is just coming back. It was exciting to see him early on in camp because he came out. He didn't have the big bulky brace on like Reuben Foster did, so it felt like he was, he's confident in the strength of that knee, and he's looked pretty good. He looks like a guy who's still getting his sea legs back under him. I think there's definitely a role for him in this offense, but you can listen to, what Ron Rivera said today when he was talking about the running back room, and he talked about Antonio Gibson, he talked about J.D. Mckissick, he talked about Peyton Barber, and then it was like, and there's also Bryce Love, who you got to respect for what he's done. You got to respect what he's done. So he's definitely seems to be the fourth guy on the depth chart right now, and he's been spending some time working on specials. So I think, we'll see him active on game days. As far as getting the ball, he seems to be down the depth chart a little bit. I don't know that we're going to see a ton of carries for Bryce Love early this year.
Chris, what do you think we can expect from Bryce Love in 2020?
See, this is the thing that blows my mind is because, now we pretty much covered every running back. And with Bryce Love, like Mitch said, he hasn't seen the field in 2 years. We don't know what he has. I mean, he hasn't played it down in the NFL. We just don't know what he's capable of, even with his, Heisman run in college, the explosion we saw. We don't know if that's still there. We don't know what he can give us. Same thing with Gibson. As much promise as he's shown in camp, he's never faced against another NFL team. So he's, although he has a lot of promise, and I think people are excited about him, he's still kind of a question mark. And Mckissick and Barber have been in the league and haven't really proved a whole lot. And I just don't feel like they're reliable running back starters. And this is just what blows my mind with the whole Adrian Peterson situation. He's a guy that has always stayed healthy. He would have played 16 games last year if Jay Gruden had benched him in the first one. And I mean, he's pretty much always pushing 1,000 yards, if not surpassing 1,000 yards. So, I mean, I don't want to say this is a throwaway season because I don't feel like it is. I feel like we're going to try to go in there and win every game. But it's definitely a prove-it season for everyone on this team. And I know Ron Rivera is looking for his running back of the future.
Yeah, and, he's looking at his quarterback of the future as well. I know, Chris, you were going to talk a little bit about Dwayne Haskins and some things that were going on with him in camp.
Yeah, I know we talk about Dwayne Haskins a lot, and so does everyone else. So we try to take a break from it occasionally. But nearing down into week one, Ron Rivera just has announced Dwayne Haskins as his starter for the year, which I think we all knew, but it is nice to kind of get that confirmed and everything so we can kind of put the quarterback controversy, if you will, to bed. But I actually read an article just before we started recording that Mitch's coworker Pete Haley had written, and he actually quoted you, Mitch, a couple times. I don't know if you've gotten the chance to read it yet, but I'm sure you know about it. But I definitely want you to take us in a little more about it, but I'll just go ahead and give you the basics. Dwayne Haskins threw an interception in 11-on-11 the other day, and you really saw the veteran come out of him as he reached out to Alex Smith, Ronald Darby, who intercepted him, Ron Rivera, and I think it was Inman as well, who was the intended receiver. It was like an outside hitch route or something, and I feel like that's the type of stuff we don't get to hear a lot about in practice. Everyone says he's maturing. Everyone says he's, taking control of the offense, but these are the little stories we don't get to hear about. But Mitch, I would love for you to expand on that if you could.
Yeah, so we get to do some mic'd up segments where we have players wired up during practice, and we had Dwayne Haskins mic'd up at FedEx Field for the scrimmage that they had there. And it's super interesting for me. It's obviously for everybody. It's super interesting getting to hear all the inside football stuff that these guys talk about, during the course of a practice. But that play in particular was interesting to hear. They were running a 2-minute drill. They had gotten down to about the 40-yard line. They had 40 seconds left, I believe, and a timeout. And Ron and Dwayne had just had a conversation like, hey, this is the situation. We're in field goal range. We have a timeout left. You can go over the middle. You can take a shot if you want. There's no need to keep trying to get out of bounds quickly. And he had Dontrell Inman running a deep out over against cover 2, and he just kind of floated a ball out to the right hand side. He didn't quite get enough behind it, and Darby picked it and ran it back to returned it to wherever he did. And immediately Dwayne comes off to the sideline. He's talking with Ken Zampese and Alex Smith, and they're discussing the play. And this is we're having the seniority that Alex has, the experience that he has. Alex is telling him, like, you got to drive that football. You got to throw that through the sideline, not to the sideline. So he basically kind of tried to drop it in over the corner's head.
Yeah, he said, look at the back of his helmet. Pass. That was what was really pushing.
So he talked about having to drive it, and you throw it so that Inman can catch it and go right out of bounds, maybe toe tap it, and if Inman can't catch it, it's gone, it's an incompletion, and you move on. And that's the thing about Dwayne, is that he's all about gathering information, and he's been like this all season. When the other quarterbacks are taking their 11-on-11 reps, he's standing right behind the line of scrimmage with Ken Zampese. He's got his helmet to his ear, listening to the play calls. The two of them are discussing the reads. You see Dwayne, doing the quarterback thing with his shoulders, where he's, going through the reads himself, even though he's not in the play. And so it's interesting, it's great to see that sort of thing. And then it also highlighted a lot of things that Ron Rivera does. Everyone talks about Ron being a defensive coach and, how much he's going to help this defense improve. But he called Dwayne over, and, he made the same point that Alex made. He's like, hey, we're in this situation. Like, we need points. We need points. You can't be turning the ball over. You can't be taking sacks. Here's what we needed to do. We'll look at it on film. When you have cover two as a defense, when you have that defense, you have to know that the corner is going to be floating back. The safety is going to be floating over. So it's kind of a small hole to throw into. And if you want to make that throw, and Dwayne has the arm and has the accuracy and has the explosion to make a throw into a tight window like that, he has to have the confidence to make that throw. And I think it highlights so much of, what we've been talking about this training camp, with Ron being so involved with every play and with every player on the team. And then also with Dwayne, learning and being an active learner and leader on this offense.
The thing about that really stuck out to me was that he actually went over to Darby and Smith before Rivera could even get to him. He was like, what could I have done better on this play? What did you see on that play that I didn't see? And, you see all the workout videos. You see all the hype behind Dwayne Haskins and, all the Washington football fans going into the season. There was a lot of stuff last year we heard about how he didn't have his head in the playbook and all this stuff questioning Dwayne's, work ethic. Do you feel like that was more of a product of the environment last year? Do you feel like Rivera's really come in and turned the tide on it? Or how much of that credit do you think goes to Dwayne and how much work he's put in this offseason?
I mean, Dwayne gets all the credit. Last season was a super tough situation. I mean, it's hard to equate it to anything else, but Dwayne was forced on Jay. Jay Gruden didn't want him. Jay Gruden actively didn't help him develop, and we can all be mad at Jay for that. Wasn't giving him reps in practice, wasn't giving him extra time in the film room to go over stuff. Kind of expected that the guys who he had in-house, who had a little more familiarity with the offense and with how the NFL offense is run, he spend more time with them. That's tough for a guy to fight through. Dwayne was in a really weird, tough situation, and it's hard to develop as a quarterback, but more so as a person and a leader, which is what you want out of your QB1. And since Rivera has come in, and as much as Ron talked about competition across the board, he sat down with Dwayne early on in his tenure and discussed what he wants to see from him and what he hopes that Dwayne can show when we get to training camp. And you've just seen Dwayne take that and run with it. And he's really done everything that you want a starting quarterback to do. And now it's about going out there and proving it. In training camp, we can preach all we want about how it's about process over result. You want to see Dwayne make the right read, throw to the correct receiver. When we get to week 1 in whatever it is, 10 days against Philly, it's going to be about what he does out on the field. And I'm excited to see it. I think he's taken all the right steps. I think he's done everything that's been asked of him and then some. And I expect Dwayne to have a good season. I expect that he's going to be the quote-unquote QB of the future for this team. And I hope that he's able to, that it all, comes together for him and he's able to, make it happen.
I know you said it's about the results, not about the process. That's very anti-Kirk Cousins of you, but they certainly need results in 2020 from Dwayne, especially after how things went last year. And I think me and Chris both agree that we expect big things from him as well. But we're gonna stay on the offensive side of the ball because you know exactly why we brought you on, for your level of expertise on the offensive line. I remember when I talked to you at the Vale. You lit up like a Christmas tree when I started talking about the line, about as much as you did when little Tua committed to your Terps. But it felt like we were the depths of disparity that time last year with the entire Trent Williams debacle. Now we have even more question marks with Trent officially being traded to the Niners and Eric Flowers going to Miami. The left side of the offensive line is about as frail as it could be. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. The coaching staff has had all kinds of different combinations in the trenches during training camp. The 2018 third-round pick, Ron Christian, one who's often struggled, will seemingly be taking the reins of left tackle. How far have you seen Christian come, and is this something that you think Washington fans will have to worry about early and often?
He's come a long way. I mean, I've said for about 2 weeks now, Jaron Christian is this year's Eric Flowers. Eric Flowers came in last year, no expectations whatsoever. Everyone thought he was a bust and a scrub. And guess what? Turned out to be a pretty good left tackle and got himself a nice little contract out of it. Jaron Christian's kind of done the same thing. I mean, before training camp, that's all we could talk about was, oh my gosh, what's going to happen on the left side? And, they brought in Cornelius Lucas, this journeyman, tackle from Chicago, and maybe he can step in and do it. And everyone kind of wrote Jaron off. And you know what? He's been pretty solid. He's been good in camp, and going against the defensive line that he's going against and the outside rushers that the Washington football team has, that's the best practice you can get. We've seen a rash of injuries up in Philly on their O-line, and I saw a bunch of reports about their tackles were turnstiles, and guys were just running free to the quarterback. As much as you want to say about Jaron, he hasn't had those issues. At no point have we said players are just running right by him and getting pressure on the QBs. Granted, there have been spots that it's happened, but he's looked good. I mean, his biggest thing that he needed to do from being drafted was to put on a little weight, put on some upper body strength, and he seems to have done it. I mean, I don't want to Ashburn syndrome myself and get locked into this, he's looked good in camp, but all we talk about is how good this Washington football team defensive line is. Chase Young, John Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat, all these dudes are stars, and he's held up pretty well against them. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that he might be, he might be the guy. He's certainly going to be the guy week one, and we'll see what happens. But I'm cautiously optimistic, and I think he could be pretty good.
I mean, iron sharpens iron. He's playing against those guys, all first-round draft picks every single day. And, I know you yourself know that, third-round draft pick, Jaron was not exactly lowly regarded. He was ranked as like a top 10 prospect in a lot of people's eyes at the left tackle position in the year in that draft. But somebody I think Chris wanted to talk about, and I want to get into a little bit as well, as Sadiq Charles. Chris, you want to go ahead with that?
Yeah, man, that's just something we haven't heard from a lot. I think when we drafted Sadiq, he definitely came in with some question marks and everything. I think he was a late round guy, but now he's not even on the field. And, we see the wrap on his leg and everything. I want to know what's up with him. I just haven't heard many reports. I haven't seen much information on him. Is he hurt, Mitch? Like, what's going on with Sadiq?
Yeah, so Ron Rivera is very close to the chest with injury information, and we haven't heard much. He has a calf injury, that much we know. How close he is to getting back, I don't think anyone really knows. To me, he's a guy that you put on IR. I mean, to start the year, and if you have to wait 8 weeks for him to come back, you wait 8 weeks. But he was a guy that needed every snap in training camp to improve and show what he could do. And obviously, we haven't seen a single snap from him yet. So, to me, I think that you need that roster spot because there's no good backup tackles. So you're going to need to keep a lot of backup tackles to figure out who that guy is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of question marks with him. There's a lot of excitement about him. I mean, you can only look at what he's done in college. He was a starting left tackle for the number 1 overall draft pick for an offensive line that was rated the best in college football last year. I mean, there's a lot to be excited. And I think that he's your long-term solution at left tackle. But as far as right now goes, or this season, I think that it might take him a little bit of time to get out there on the field.
Yeah, I was definitely looking forward to seeing him play because I know, free agency tackles is not always the way to go. I just feel like we have a lot of question marks coming in, and we're just trying to pick the best that we got. I don't think we really have our guy right now, but I feel like the status of Sadiq is part of the reason why the team went out and traded for former Raiders tackle David Sharp. If you don't know already, Washington traded a 2021 6th-round pick for Sharp and received a 2021 7th round from the Raiders. Mitch, I think it's safe to say that this is purely a depth move. As you said, we just need to, rack up on the tackles. And I especially think it's a depth move just because we're this close to the season and he won't be able to get a chance to prove himself in camp. But do you feel like Sharp is a guy who could make this team or possibly earn a starting position at some point during the season?
There shouldn't be a starting spot for him. I'll say that much. I mean, ideally, you go into the season and Jaron Christian is a stalwart at left and Morgan Moses has a better season than last year on the right side, and you don't need any of these backup tackles at all. But behind Jaron and Morgan is a lot of question marks. I mean, Cornelius Lucas is a very straightforward tackle. If he gets his hands on you first, you're done. You're beat because he's that strong, he's that big, and he's that athletic. But if you're able to give him any kind of move, if you're able to slap his hands down, you're getting around him. And he's a guy that I guess is the best option right now as your backup swing tackle, but it's not a good option. So that's why they brought in David Steinmetz. That's why they have, David Sharp in there. Timon Paris is the other backup tackle that's out there, and he's not an NFL player right now. So it's you hope that you don't have to go to any of these guys because I'm not particularly confident in any of them.
Yeah, we go from left tackle, we go to guard. Let's go to center on our hog hierarchy we got going here. We got a former 6th-round pick, Chase Roullier, has become a constant on the offensive line, starting almost all 16 games last season. But he's been mixing it up with a Washington football team 5th-round pick and rookie Kith Ismail, if I'm saying his name correctly. Kith Ismail brings a lot of versatility, being able to line up at guard and center. What have you seen from Keith and Ashburn, and what do you think people can expect from him, Mitch?
Well, I think you kind of have 3 guys for 2 spots, and those 2 spots are starting center and kind of backup center / backup guard. And those 3 guys are Chase Roullier, last year's 5th-round pick, Ross Pierschbaker from Alabama, and then Keith Ishmael from San Diego State. Keith has looked good. He's, I think Chase is your day one. He's your starting center. I don't think there's any real question about that happening. It's kind of a competition for that backup center job between Ishmael and Pierschbaker, and Ishmael's looked better than Pierschbaker has. I think that, from 2 weeks of training camp and, obviously nothing else to look at, Roulier's coming up to be a free agent, so next year. So I don't know that you're going to give a big-time contract to a center, and I think Keith Ishmael is going to be on that rookie pay scale, and he'll be able to step right in. But for this year, I think Roullier is going to be that guy. Pierschbaker spent more time playing backup guard than he has backup center. Most of the second reps at center have gone to Keith Ishmael. Obviously, Pierschbaker's worked in there some. Roulier's worked in with the 2s at guard also, but I think that's more just to kind of keep him fluid and comfortable playing that position in case a worst case scenario and you end up with 1,000 injuries and you need to reshuffle everybody around. But Roullier will be your starting center this year.
I don't see Roullier getting Ryan Kelly money anytime soon, but I will say he has been very consistent. And, we were talking about Eric Flowers earlier, who was a very, had a career renaissance in Washington, former 1st-round pick. How does Josh Garnett play in all this, Mitch? That's a former 1st-round pick there as well. Do you think that he's going to have a similar path to Flowers, or is this Wes Martin's job to kind of lose here as well?
I know that Ron Rivera likes Wes Martin a lot, and you know that from the amount of time that he spends with him. You see him talking with Wes on the field, in that fiery speech he gave on the first Saturday of training camp. He pointed out at Wes Martin. He was like, "You have an opportunity. This is your chance. Make the most of it." And he's not doing that to just anybody. That's a guy that he knows that he wanted to respond and to get better. And Wes was taking all the first rep guards at all the first rep snaps at left guard early on in camp. And they started rotating guys in. A little bit. Josh Garnett had about 2 days where he was with the ones at guard, and then they brought Wes back. So I think it's Wes's job. He seems to me like he's going to be your starter at guard. The backup guard position is going to be, it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to have a combination of Ishmael, Pierschbaker, Garnett, and then Wes Schweitzer is just starting to get healthy. I don't know if you can afford to keep both Schweitzer and Garnett, but that's going to be an interesting setup to see, how things go.
I do know that if the team were to part ways with Schweitzer, it would give them about $4 million in dead money. So it is kind of a tight race at left guard for sure. And it's good to see Martin, very good to see Martin kind of respond to Ron Rivera's challenge. And, I think they brought in Garnett as almost of a kind of to humble Martin a little bit and show him, I know Rivera also said that he wanted Martin to have his head in the playbook and he wanted him to get better. He knows that he's got to earn everything that he's getting this season. So with that being said, what is your final prediction for the offensive line? Who do you think starts left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle? I feel like the right side's pretty secure, but the left side's really where all the question marks are.
So I think your starting five are going to be Moses, Sheriff, Roulier, Martin, and Christian. And then I think they're going to keep 8 or 9 O-linemen in total. I think Sadiq Charles is one, but I think they're going to keep him and then put him on IR so he won't count for a roster spot right away. So I think you got 4 other guys that they're going to keep on this team, and that's going to be Ishmael, Pierce Baker, and then Wes Schweitzer as the 8th, and then your 9th guy is going to be, I'm going to go Cornelius Lucas because he has a little more experience in the league, and those will be your 9. There's a chance that they're going to keep Sadiq, so that'll be, and then put him on IR. Maybe they'll bring back Garnett or David Steinmetz at that point, but I think those are your 9 going into the season.
I got you, and I know it's not easy to grade offensive line as a whole. But with all this O-line talk, I kind of want to hear your prediction on just like the floor and the ceiling of this offensive line in any type of way you want to try to describe that.
Yeah. I don't know if that instills a lot of confidence. I'll start with the negative side, I guess. The floor is pretty damn low. I mean, it could be a complete disaster. Sheriff and Moses last year were not very good. Part of that was due to injury. Part of that was, due to kind of, I would say, scheme/use. You need those two to be good for this offensive line to be good. If they revert back to the form that we saw last year, I mean, this could be it could be a tough year for the running backs, and it could be a tough year for Dwayne and the entire offense. Now, on the positive side, Brandon Sheriff is again in a contract year. So he should be playing at top level. You're hoping that he's back to that at minimum Pro Bowl and hopefully close to all pro level at right guard. Morgan Moses has looked very good in camp, and again, Ashburn syndrome with everything it is. But the one thing that I point out about Morgan is in those one-on-one drills with Chase Young, he's kind of won the lion's share of them. I don't want to say dominated Chase Young, but he's looked really good. There have been a lot of Chase Young highlights that have made it around social media. If you look at them, they've been against, players that aren't going to make the team. Paul Adams. They've been against, one-on-one blocking with, Logan Thomas. One of them was a one-on-one block with Antonio Gibson. Those are guys that he should dominate. There haven't been a whole lot of him going directly through Morgan Moses to get to the quarterback. So I'm going to be cautiously optimistic that Morgan is going to be improved and that things are going to be better on the right side this year. Chase Roulier is good. He's solid. He is who he is. We know what we're getting out of him. He's never really been injured. He's been a solid center for 2+ years now. I think that he can be, a middle of the road guy. And then it just comes down to what happens on the left-hand side. I think Jaron's going to take a huge step for him and, maybe be a average left tackle in the league. Not necessarily top 15, but maybe, 15 to 20 or so. And Wes Martin, I hope that he can be good. It's hard to really get a feel for how much he's improved, but he has certainly a big opportunity. So, if the bottom side of it is they could be a really bad offensive line, I think the top end is they could be a middle of the road crew. So, they could be, the 15th best offensive line potentially, but the biggest thing they have going for them is going to be Scott Turner's offense and any kind of confusion that he can create to help, slow down a pass rush. And so that's kind of where I think these guys are going to be.
And definitely, Scott Turner's offense, getting the ball out quick is very important as well. I like that little nugget you had there about Chase Young and Morgan Moses. Everybody knows Morgan Moses has had a really good offseason. He's kind of gotten in some better shape. Looks like he's kind of nursed himself back from those injuries as well. Something that I noticed about Morgan Moses during a lot of these training camps videos is that have you seen him in the 4-point stance a lot as well?
Yeah, so they have a drill that they run in the 4-point stance. Anything outside of goal line, I don't expect that they'll ever be in it. But they've been working on them getting off low and getting off with forward momentum. So they get them in that 4-point stance, kind of leaning all the way forward on their hands so that they can practice firing out low, firing out. at the defense. That's been the biggest change of this offensive line, is that it's a more aggressive blocking strategy, in that even in pass sets, their first step isn't to set backwards, and then wait for the defensive line to engage them. Their first step is forward, and then obviously a typical NFL pass set. So they're getting a chance to get their hands on the D line and the edge rushers before the edge rushers and D lines get their hands on them. So it'll be interesting to see. It creates a situation where if those guys get beat, they're going to get beat early and quick, and they'll be at the quarterback. But it also gives them a chance to win early and quick and stall any forward momentum. So it's all new. We have the whole new Ron Rivera era. It's going to be exciting to see.
And we're going to find out who the final 53 of Ron Rivera's first, roster is going to be tomorrow. And, he kicked it off with a bang with the Peterson release. Mitch, you're on Washington Football Twitter. You've seen some of the names that have been speculated as quote unquote surprise cuts come tomorrow. So I'm going to list some names, and you tell me what their status will be after Saturday. Are you ready?
Right. I'm ready.
All right. So we're going to start it off strong. Reuben Foster.
Cut.
Why?
Oh, you want more from this? He just hasn't
Oh,
looked
yeah,
very
for sure.
explosive. I mean, the biggest thing with Reuben was his athleticism, and he's been running mostly with the threes. He still has the big bulky brace on his leg. The biggest, there's one play that sticks out to me just as an accumulation of everything that we've seen from Reuben. And he was dropping into coverage kind of over by the sideline. One of the quarterbacks made a bad overthrow of a receiver in the slot, and he just kind of had to jump up, catch it, and he had a pick six down the sideline. And he kind of jumped up, and I'm not the most athletic dude in the world, but I feel like my vertical would have been similar to the explosion that we saw from him. I mean, it was, sheets of paper on the ground levels of vertical leaps. So I don't think that he's fully recovered from it. I don't know that he has full feeling back in his foot yet. I don't know that he's, 100% ready to go, and they have nothing invested in him. This coaching staff didn't sign him. He's in the last year of a rookie deal. There's not a whole lot that's tying into this organization, and if his athleticism isn't back, I don't know why you would keep him.
Yeah, you talk about him being kind of scared to come down that leg. That leads perfectly into my next one, Alex Smith.
Roster. I'm out of the business of doubting Alex Smith. I mean, every step of the way he surprised us, and I think he's a perfect backup quarterback to have for this team. I mean, you have Kyle. So assuming Dwayne plays well, you don't ever see Kyle Allen or Alex Smith, and then you just have Alex's expertise in the quarterback's room, and we've seen him be an incredible teammate his entire career. Starting off in San Fran with Colin Kaepernick, then going to Kansas City with Pat Mahomes. He's been an incredible mentor for young quarterbacks all along the way, and to have him there with Dwayne is invaluable. So I think if minimum just for that, he makes the team. But more so, if Dwayne gets hurt, why not go with Alex Smith? I mean, it's crazy to think after everything that we've seen from him, but he's probably the best quarterback on this roster, assuming that
Absolutely.
He's healthy. That you go with him. Kyle Allen, I've compared to Mark Brunell. I mean, he doesn't throw the ball downfield. Every pass he throws is at the line of scrimmage, and that might be that he knows this offense so well that he can get rid of the ball like that and get moving with it. But I think Alex is probably is definitely the most accomplished guy. And if Dwayne gets hurt and isn't able to play, Alex is a guy to step in and take those reps. So I think he's on the roster.
And I think that's completely fair. But you just kind of wonder about the money situation as well. I mean, he has a lot of guaranteed money for the next couple seasons. And I do feel like Adrian Peterson was a money decision as well. I mean, Alex getting to the point where he can even practice in and of itself is an accolade. And it just kind of makes me wonder how much the team is going to really commit to him stepping on the field in 2020. Do you feel like the team would be hesitant if there was a situation like you said where Dwayne Haskins got hurt, or do you feel like they would go to Kyle Allen first?
I mean, I think right now they would go to Kyle Allen first because I don't think we've seen enough from Alex in 11-on-11s and all that to throw him out there. And you're right. There's guaranteed injury money the next 2 years, which is why there might be some hesitancy to do it. But Ron also wants these guys to have the best opportunity to win while also growing. And I think that Kyle Allen is a nice young quarterback, but he's a nice young backup quarterback, and he'll be a good guy to stick around and be, the left-hand man for Dwayne for years to come. But Alex deserves a chance to play in this league, and I think that he gives the rest of the offense the best chance to mature as a group. If for whatever reason Dwayne gets hurt and they need somebody to come in and captain that unit.
Absolutely. I mean, just what he did in 2018, some people are going to downplay it, but he had the team at 6-3. There was excitement in the building. I remember you guys talking about it. I think JP said that there was just something about Alex Smith that he just couldn't put his finger on, but that winning attitude, that winning culture seemed like it was coming back before things tragically ended against Houston. So I'll put a little bit of a twist on this last one, if you will. I was going to ask you about a specific player, but I want to kind of switch it up a little bit. Is there your own personal player you feel as if people are not going to see being a big cut tomorrow? You have a personal favorite?
For a guy that I think will get cut or won't get cut?
Will get cut.
I have a sneaky, tiny inkling that I think Ryan Anderson might be a surprise.
He read my mind, Chris. He read my mind.
It's a deep group, and he doesn't really fit in with the linebacking core. He doesn't really fit in as a defensive end. If you listen to the specialist pod, you listen to Nick Sundberg talk about James Smith-Williams, the 7th-round pick out of NC State. He's a crazy athletic dude. He's super smart. I don't know that he's a guy that you want on the field, week one, but I think he's a guy that you want around the facility to help develop. And maybe that might be on the practice squad, but I kind of have a sneaky back to the, tingle that Ryan Anderson might be somebody that doesn't make the 53.
My gut, if I were to have a personal pick, it probably would have been a guy like Fabian Moreau. I've heard a lot of things about him and how the coach staff isn't super out on him, but I think Ryan Anderson is somebody that people aren't talking about a lot, and I feel like he could have his exodus from the team come tomorrow just because we heard months ago, we're trying to find a role for Ryan. We're trying to find a place for him on this defense, and here we are a week away from kickoff, and you don't hear about Ryan Anderson. This is a time where, like you said, an abbreviated offseason where everybody's getting exposure, and Ron definitely doesn't lack having people rotate in and out. He's giving everybody looks, and Ryan Anderson is just a name that we're not hearing. But as we've said to many that have come on the show, we aren't going to badge you with the conspiracy theories about the entire Dan Snyder saga, as if you know much more than we do. But I will ask you this. Julie Donaldson and all the new additions are seemingly trying to move on. And we think a lot of people should as well. So a little bit more of a lighthearted question I'll follow this up with. So after Fred Smith's ring endorsement for the Red Wolves on your guys' show, and your amazing rendition of How to the Red Wolves, is Mitch Tischler pro Red Wolves?
I'm pro Red Wolves. I'll tell you what, the Washington football team is starting to grow on me a little bit. I kind of like it. People don't love the block W or like that we're just the football team, but I kind of like seeing Eagles versus football team. Like how much more iconic are you? You're the football team. Like I'm kind of getting on board with it a little bit. I kind of like it, but if they do end up moving away from football team and go with a real nickname, Red Wolves is my number one choice.
I think it's not even close. I don't know that you've seen this, or I'm sure you have. There's the whole Red Wolves mob. There's the Warriors mob, and the Warriors mob feel like that there's military connotations and all this other stuff that they feel like would make Warriors a better name. Do you feel like there already being another, Warriors franchise? Do you feel like that would kind of dampen us being the Warriors?
No, I don't think so. I think that's certainly in the running. To me, it's Red Wolves or football team. Those are the two that I'm in on.
I love it.
I will say that I love the enthusiasm and the passion that the fan base shows about the next name, and honestly, it's making an impact over in Ashburn at the Washington football team headquarters. They hear, they see, they're open, their eyes are open to everything that's happening around. So I love it. I think it's exciting that the fans and the team want to discuss it. I am so over talking about nicknames. I'm so happy that there's going to be football played by a football team on a football field, and we're going to be able to talk about Dwayne's decision on 3rd and 7, and whether Montez Sweat or 2 sacks or 1.5 or whatever it may be. This football being back and being able to talk about the game again is just spectacular.
And it's been such a long off season, man. You got a claw stuff to talk about. I remember the name change was all the talk. But like you said, man, it's phenomenal that we're at the point now where we can finally start talking about football. And speaking of football, next Sunday we take on the Eagles. You think the Washington football team comes out of it victorious?
My opinion has changed a lot over the last, I would say, week or so. I thought that they were going to play the Eagles pretty tight, but seeing all the injuries that are up in Philly, it's hard. I think the Washington football team can win this game, and people think however they feel about it. Last year they came out hot. They were up 20-7 against the Eagles at halftime. The Eagles started out slow. Wentz wasn't great. You look at all the injuries, just along the offensive line, Brandon Brooks, Andre Dillard, their two biggest defensive signings during the offseason, Javon Hargrave, the defensive tackle, and Will Parks, their safety, are both going to miss the game. Alshon Jeffrey, Jalen Reagor are both missing the game. I mean, Miles Sanders and Wentz have both been dealing with injuries, already in training camp. We know how fragile, Carson Wentz is. I don't know. I think that when this defensive line gets on the field, I think that they could wreak havoc. I mean, maybe I'm being overly bullish, and I've been known to do that from time to time, but I think the front seven is going to dominate the game and basically win it for them. It's going to be a low-scoring, ugly football game, and as I think a lot of the early season NFL games are going to be, just because of the situation with the offseason that we've been in. But I kind of think Matt Ioannidis is going to have 2.5 sacks, and Montez Sweat's going to get one, and maybe Chase Young will get the other half of Ioannidis's or whatever, and John Allen's going to blow up Boston Scott in the middle if they try and run him between the tackles. I kind of think that this defense is gonna be dominant week one. Maybe, I don't know. Am I being too bullish?
No. I mean, honestly, every single time that we've defeated Philadelphia, it's been because of their woes on the offensive line. I don't know. A couple years back, Lane Johnson was at, and Ryan Kerrigan mutilated the guy in front of him. And one thing you didn't even mention was Jason Peters. He wants tackle money. He's saying it's not good enough to be paid as a guard. You guys are trying to move me around, and I want to be compensated for it. You mentioned Dillard. Yeah, you mentioned Dillard. Oh, God. Yes, I do know who his agent is.
Jason Peters has the same agent as Trent Williams, so you know how well
and Teron Christian. Teron Christian also has the same agent.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, they have too many woes. I'm very high on Miles Sanders, and I feel like when they're at full capacity, they're a phenomenal team, coached very well by Peterson. I don't think it's bullish to say that at all. I mean, Chris, what's your opinion? Do you think the Washington football team comes out week one victorious?
Yeah, I'm going to go in pretty optimistic. 2 weeks ago, I said the score was going to be 2017, but after all these injuries, I'm going to say that Philly loses a touchdown. So it's 20-10. That's the final. We are undefeated for the first time, and I don't know when. I think it's only been like 2 years. I think 2 years ago we started 1-0, so the Alex Smith year.
I certainly hope that's the case. I don't want any Washington football talk pods with you guys listening around, listening to sad music and contemplating on what could have been, because we definitely don't want to be doing that ourselves. So, but thank you, Mitch, for giving us your time today, man. We really appreciate it.
Philly story, real quick, before you go. This is a home game. This is a home game against Philly, but a few years ago, in Philadelphia, Chris Baker it was an interception, and Chris Baker hit their quarterback during the return.
Yes,
he got ejected for getting in a fight with Jason Peters.
Yep.
And as they were coming off the field, a fan threw a full cheesesteak at Chris Baker, and it hit the photographer that was standing next to me. And so this dude is just covered in cheese whiz from head to toe, and just like hating life beyond belief. And whenever the Washington football team plays the Eagles, I always think of that story, and I always get a hearty laugh out of it. And I always get a text from that dude being like, "F you."
I can totally picture Baker just picking it up, looking at him, and eating it, man. That
so
Philly Washington rivalry is real, man. Is real.
That's so Philly fan too, to throw a whole ass cheesesteak at another player.
Right. Like they egg the buses on they always egg the opposing team buses on the way in, which is whatever, funny enough. But throw a whole cheesesteak? What are we doing?
That's the most Philadelphia fan thing I think I've probably ever heard. But thank you so much, Mitch, for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. I know this time last year, I talked to you and Pete about starting a podcast. You guys gave me some really good advice. And, we strive to be like you guys every single day.
I love it. It's been fun following along, seeing you guys, what you guys have been doing. Keep it up. It's a lot of fun listening. It's a lot of fun to do.
Thank you so much, man. That means the world to us. Hopefully me and the girls can meet up with you guys at some point during the season, barring COVID. And hopefully another pod party can happen soon so we can get some drinks.
We all need a lot of drinks, my friend. This whole fan base deserves about 1 billion beers.
Hopefully we don't have too many reasons to drink this year, but
I like to cash in that 1 billion beer offer.
Listen, whenever we're able to get together, you guys come up to DC, we'll take care of you.
That sounds great, man.
He's not lying. So
yeah, I finally turned 21, so I can come up there now for real.
Don't act like you weren't already drinking, Chris.
Well,
No.
At the bar.
It's got to be legal, above the board. Lawyers are listening all the time. You got to be careful.
Good guy, Mitch. Thank you so much, man, for coming on. We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Make sure you guys subscribe. Leave a 5-star review. If you're already subscribed, unsubscribe, or resubscribe again because we're shameless like that. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Washington Brawl. Make sure you like and retweet this episode when it drops. Head over to www.brawlnetwork.com and check out the latest articles by our guy, David Oberman, who is killing it per usual. His full roster breakdown will be available when this episode drops. While you're at the Brawl Network's official website, make sure you pick up some merch and support your boys as well. As you can see, I'm wearing our Washington Brawl design, available in black, white, and burgundy.
We got a new one today, Parker.
Yeah, the sympathy
shirt out today. Y'all go check it out. It's a little homage to Dwayne Haskins. I think everyone's kind of familiar with his handle on Twitter's DH Simba, and I think he kind of takes in that whole Lion King mentality, which I think is pretty sweet. Honestly, I think Lions, Red Wolves, they're not far off. They're pretty close. So, yeah, we got a little Simba shirt out there, so y'all go check it out.
Not standing the Washington Lions. But speaking of merch, thank you to everyone who participated in our first ever merch giveaway of our Sean Taylor design. And huge congratulations to @FootballFan on Twitter for winning. He's an avid listener of the show, and we really appreciate you, man. Make sure you check this out on YouTube as well, where we officially have all the episodes up moving forward on the Brawl Network's official YouTube channel. Check out our Washington Brawl Madden 21 Game of the Week, where you can see yours truly taking on randoms as a Washington football team live on the Brawl Network's Twitch. Our first episode was pretty nuts. Make sure you guys give that episode a look. On next week's episode, we'll have our reactions to the Washington football team's final roster, and we'll be joined by another special guest, so make sure you guys don't miss that. This has been the Washington Brawl podcast, presented to you by the Brawl Network. Peace.